Good evening, everyone. I'm not sure this mic is on, but
So quick point, the mics are not for PA, the mic
okay.
is only for the live.
You told me that before, so I should have remembered that. Can everybody in the back hear me? Okay. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I think most of you know me, Renee Kelly, Associate Vice President for Strategic Partnerships, Innovation, Resources, and Engagement. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're really proud of the 4 teams that have been participating in the MIRTA, the 7th cohort of the MIRTA Accelerator. Tonight is sort of like their graduation night. So thank you to all of their friends and family and supporters for being here to recognize their achievements. We started the MIRTA program in 2018 as a way to really try to accelerate the commercialization of university research. And you'll hear some numbers tonight demonstrating the impact that the program has had on the teams and on the state. And actually, the numbers you'll see are as of June 30th, 2023. We don't have our full numbers for 2024 yet. But one of the things we've seen from the impact is we're sort of on a hockey stick exponential curve. So you can expect those numbers to be a lot higher when we release them in a couple of months. And we've seen many startups form. We've seen partnerships with existing companies here in Maine and beyond. And most importantly, we've seen innovation and research at the university translated outside and into practice in the real world. So the teams you'll see tonight are on the beginning of that pathway. They've made a lot of progress in the last 16 weeks, and I'm excited for you to hear about it. So I'm going to turn it over to Anthony Durante, who is our Director of New Ventures and has managed the day-to-day operations of the MIRTA program this year.
Thank you, Renee. And managed is a loose term because this is my first run through it. So good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Durante. I am the Director of New Ventures here at the University of Maine. I joined the university in February. So this is my first time seeing a lot of the programming that we've been doing. The MIRTA program is a very impressive program. I've learned as much as probably I've been trying to help teach. So I'll run you through a little bit about what MIRTA is, why we do it, how we do it, and I'll tell you a little bit about the teams before we bring them up this evening. So, so our 4 goals of MIRTA is a couple of things. So one is using that accelerator model that we've kind of borrowed from the startup world and transfer the process over to a commercialization process. So we don't assume that the outcome of MIRTA is a startup. That is one of a few potential outcomes. It could be, as Renee mentioned, it could be a corporate partnership. It could be the startup itself, could be a joint venture in some way, shape, or form. It could also be bringing it back in the lab. We've exposed the technology that's happening here on campus, and we've to potential customers, and we learned enough to know that we need to bring it back in the labs and tweak on it some more so that we get somewhere that we build a thing that people want to invest in, whether it's in a partnership or a startup or things like that. Obviously developing relationships. So our teams go out, they do a ton of interviews. We match them up with advisors along the way. So they get to really build some great relationships in industry and learn firsthand the problems and the challenges that the industries where they're applying their technologies are seeing in the real world. Again, as we talked about, understanding and getting to a plan that shows their best path to market. Like I said, it's not necessarily a startup. There might be a better pathway that makes more sense. Or there might, again, that pathway might be get it back in the lab and let's keep working on it. And lastly, it's professional development for faculty, staff, and student. It teaches them a lot of tools in this customer discovery process that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and understanding how to conduct interviews, how to take that scientific theory of developing a process, testing it, getting some results, and going back and redesigning your next hypothesis. So taking that scientific process and applying it to business. So what does the program look like? So this program ran about 16 weeks. We started in August, just before the school year started. And we're wrapping up here in tonight, sort of. The teams have a couple of more assignments to do before the true end, but this is really the culmination of the program. So we start off, they did a 3-day intensive program, 3 full days. We teach them that customer discovery process. We do some team building exercises. I think, honestly, I think that was one of the better takeaways that the teams had. They really enjoyed the team building process. Teach them about sizing markets, doing interviews, removing bias from all of these processes as you learn, as you go out and do customer discovery. Once we get through boot camp, we go into weekly or almost weekly coaching sessions. So probably of 16 weeks, we probably did 13 or so, working around a couple of holidays. And each week we kind of set, we sit down, we see what progress the teams have made, and then kind of determine what is the next step to get to the next week and what do we want to try to accomplish. We also match teams up with advisors. And advisors come in a lot of shapes and sizes. Some of them are on the technical side. They understand the industry that the teams are in or are looking at. They also are on the business side. They have started businesses themselves. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. A couple are here with us tonight. And some are both. Some are entrepreneurs in these industries. So they really get some good advice on how, what does this technology need to look like once we get out in the real world. The structure. So again, we talked a little bit, we do customer discovery. So teaching this customer discovery process, going out and talking to actual potential customers who want to use this. If you look, there's an article out by Forbes. I usually throw a graph up there, but on this screen, it would look like 2-point font. So not very helpful. But if you look at the number one reasons why startup fails, it's because they build something that nobody wants. And then there's another, in their top 10, there's a whole bunch of other reasons. It comes around to hiring the right people, raising money, being efficient with your time. But if you don't get this, we build something that someone wants to buy, everything else falls apart because you don't hire the right people. You aren't able to raise money. You aren't able to hit your sales goals. And the whole thing sort of starts. It's like that first domino. So what we're trying to do is prove that we've got a thing that people want to buy, and that sort of helps everything else sort of follow. Again, in this interview process, we're determining who are the best partners, who are potential customers. We're looking at market size. So ideally, as they get through these interviews, they're starting to see this market's interested, maybe this market is not, or this market is really quick to adopt. This other market is very interested, but there's a much longer sales cycle or something like that. And we can figure out where is the best entry point, or what is our beachhead market. And then we're looking at, so some of the teams come to us and they've already got intellectual property around what they're going through the market customer discovery process with. Some of them are still kind of working on what they're doing in the lab. So we can help them think about how they want to protect what they're working on IP-wise. We can help with strategy. We can look at, okay, well, if you do want to commercialize this, we can talk about licensing agreements and agreements with the university that allows that technology, again, to be used by either the startup or in a corporate partnership. And again, get out into the real world. So we're solving real problems. So you hear a lot about this. It kind of, we use almost, it's a matrix. It's called the technology readiness level and the commercial readiness level. And it's a matrix that started in the federal government, I think at NASA, that is sort of become pretty widely adopted across several government institutions and even into universities and other entrepreneur support organizations. And it basically breaks down into 2 scores. Your technology readiness level is exactly what it sounds like. Is the technology at a point where it's ready to be out in the real world and solve a real problem? And then same thing with commercialization readiness level, exactly what it sounds like. Is there a business opportunity in some way, shape, or form that makes sense? And we ask the teams to do this process when they get in at boot camp and they start, And then we do one at the end, or actually just probably about a week ago, we had them run through this matrix again. And what you will see is this spiderweb diagram, and it comes into kind of an overall score. And then we use multicolors, and you can see, where they started and where they are today. And you'll hear the teams talk about that in their presentations this evening of how they've progressed. Some have made some big progress, some have made some smaller progress, but it also gives them goals. If they know their scores are low in a particular area, they know where they need to focus. So some fun facts of how we have been doing with MIRTA. As Renee said, we're seeing kind of the flywheel kick in. So we've had 26 teams run through the 6 cohorts. 5 of those teams have moved on to the national I-Corps program. So there is a progression. We do what they call a regional I-Corps program here on campus. The teams go through, they have to do 12 customer interviews in about a 4-week period. We teach them the basics of that process. The next is coming to MIRTA, so now we extend that program out to 16 weeks. They have to do at least 24 interviews, so we double down on that number. And we're also teaching the prototyping and looking at the technical side of things. So now we're not just looking at the business. And then there's a national I-Corps program. The national I-Corps program is very intense. It's the same 4 weeks, but the teams have to do up to 100, at least 100 interviews. So when you get to national I-Corps, we're not playing anymore. It's big leagues. But what we're seeing is organizations like the National Science Foundation, the National NIH, National Institute of Health. Sorry, brain is a little still seizing from the nerves. So National Institute of Health. When we look at SBIR and STTR applications, which is federal government funding university or university associated startups with money to commercialize products, they are now requiring this commercialization piece because they're investing millions and millions of taxpayer dollars on this research, and they want to see this stuff get out in the real world. When we don't want to be doing research for research's sake. Lastly, so we've seen 8 startups come out of our programs, and I think the big number there is the 6.4 million in external funding and actual prototype sales. So we're actually generating revenue, generating research dollars as an output of this program. So a lot of thank yous. This takes an army to run. This is our teaching team. Several are here tonight, and we definitely want to thank them for their time. They helped us through boot camp. And then Renee, myself, and Janet Yancey Rona on our team met with our teams every week through our meetings. So that was a real help. So we want to thank those folks. And again, we want to thank our advisors. Again, we've got folks in industry who have either are an industry expert, they've been entrepreneurs, or they've done both. Some of these are from our network. Some of these are from our network at MTI. And some of these are I moved here from Pennsylvania. Some of these are folks in my own network back in Pennsylvania. So I've got some folks I can call, and they actually answer the phone when I ring it. So they've been very helpful, and I really appreciate all of their help. So I want to thank them. So if we can give a quick round of applause to our teaching team and our advisors. And lastly, I want to thank the Maine Technology Institute, MTI. They have been instrumental in funding this program and funding our teams as they have made their way through the program and out into the real world. Those startups and our teams here at campus would not be able to do without their support. So big thank you out to MTI. So thank you, MTI. All right, so we're doing very good on time. So I'm going to jump into who you're going to meet tonight. So we've got 4 teams. We have a company called Newterra. This is Aaron Gallant's team. Aaron could not join us tonight. He's actually out at a customer visit in Ohio, and you'll hear from him in a minute. We pre-recorded his pitch. We have a team called Astroneer. They are working on applying. Oh, sorry, let me back up. So Newterra is looking at technologies in soil stabilization and looking at how can we recapture carbon that comes out of the process of making things like cement, and how do we capture that back in as cement is used in what we call a soil stabilization process. And Aaron's going to explain that a lot better than I can. We have our team Astroneer that is led by Manisha, and comes out of owner's lab. They are looking at applying graphene to water filtration process to remove PFAS from water systems. And Manisha is going to tell us all about that program. We have a team by the name of Prygen that's led by Vijay, who's with us this evening, out of Dr. Sepade Ganavati's lab. And they are looking at privacy in software and how do we identify points in software code where privacy information is being collected, and we need to either put that into user agreements or make sure they're complying with things like GPDR. And Vijay is going to explain all about that tonight. And our last team that's going to present tonight is called Reform Composites Engineering. They are looking at an advanced manufacturing process. The team is led by Cody, but Zane is going to tell us all about their process. They have a very cool table over there of some of the technology being applied in the real world. And they are looking at an advanced manufacturing process and how do we use advanced composites and some advanced manufacturing processes to create products that have ultimately replaced steel, are more recyclable and more environmentally friendly. So those are our 4 teams tonight. So with that, we are going to get the show on the road. I'm going to switch out of this and close this. And I will bring up Aaron. So our first presenter this evening All right. So our first presenter evening is Aaron Gallant with his team Newterra.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Aaron Gallant. I'm an associate professor of geotechnical engineering in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at UMaine. I study how the ground interacts with the built environment, and more specifically, research new soil stabilization or ground improvement techniques. I am the primary investigator and team lead for Newterra, where we are literally making new ground. I apologize for not being with you tonight. I am currently in Columbus, Ohio, with a potential partner to commercialize this technology. And before we get started, I want to make you aware that the production of cementitious materials accounts for 8+% of global greenhouse gas or GHG emissions. This is the emissions equivalent to nearly 380 million cars, or the number of cars in the United States, India, and Indonesia combined. So this is not a trivial amount of CO2, and it is one of the most talked about problems in the civil engineering and construction industries. Embodied carbon is the CO2 generated from materials that we use in construction, and it is the CO2 that's locked in throughout a facility's life. If we think about a life cycle assessment for the different phases of the built environment, we have the product phase that's illustrated here, all right, in this diagram. We also have the construction phase where a contractor comes and builds a facility. We have the use and maintenance phase, and then we also have the end of life phase, all right? But if I point your attention to the left-hand side of that figure, you'll see that 65 to 85% of the total body carbon emissions comes from the product phase, all right? And even more specifically, it's mostly due to the manufacturing of those products, all right? And so I'm illustrating some GHG emissions here and that attributed to materials. What's currently going on in the world is that we have a lot of new directives and laws, especially in the US and in Europe. What these are doing is mandating now public GHG reporting so that now everyone is exposed, all right, to the amount of CO2 that they're emitting into the atmosphere. This provides transparency to investors. And this is important because now this means this is material, all right, to a company's value, all right? And so now investors can really evaluate risks that might be present due to stricter climate regulations anticipated in the future, all right? What these regulations also do is require tracking across a value chain. So if we think about the contractor's perspective, really the materials go into their CO2 emissions or GHG reporting, all right, in addition to anything else that's associated with their operations. So it does not just put a spotlight on the high emitter manufacturer. It's also trying to recognize that this contractor has no value, all right, without the high emitter, all right, or the manufacturer of CO2. What we're attempting to do, though, is give the contractor a means to actually reduce the amount of CO2 emissions attributed to materials, where right now they feel like there's very little that they can do. So part of our value proposition here is actually trying to help a contractor substantially reduce the GHG emissions attributed to their operations, all right, which really comes from the materials. What our technology will do is two things. One, we're going to stabilize weak soils, all right? And we're going to do it with similar performance, if not better performance than with conventional methods. And we're going to store carbon in the ground, which is where it belongs. If we think about where cement production starts, it starts with the quarrying of limestone, which geologically stores CO2. That quarried limestone is taken to a plant where lime and cement is produced. And during that production process, the quarried limestone is decomposed by heating it up in a kiln. And then that geologically stored CO2 is released from the rock. What we're going to do is take that CO2 that's released, we're going to add it to the ground. That's going to be mixed, similar to conventional methods with either lime or cement. And we're going to restore that CO2 that's going to bind or cement the soil the way that you see right here. This is just a block of material that comes from one of our larger scale experiments, right? And mineralization of CO2 has been identified as a key approach to carbon management by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. All right, and this was in a recent report that was released this summer in 2024. Big part of the solution. We understand the parameters of functionality to harm. This is important. Conventionally, you will mix soil, lime and water with the soil. And then what we're doing is also adding CO2. And this is going to bring out a binder, all right, that cements the material together. And the reaction does produce heat. So if you look at this video or this thermal image, the soil carbonation in progress, where you see that heat being generated, all right, is where the binder is being produced. Now, this reaction happens almost instantaneously. So part of what we're also doing is understanding how to get CO2 into the ground. If we look at this cartoon image over here on the right, the red arrows are illustrating the CO2 gas flow or position of the CO2 in the soil. And then if we continue over to the right even further, the color coding should align with this binder here. We're putting a coating of calcium carbonate or a cementitious material that actually binds these soil grains together. What we've been in the process of doing over the last 5 or 6 years is scaling systems for commercial applications. All right, 2018 and 2020, we started at the elemental phase to understand parameters of functionality. We took that understanding into the lab and performed larger scale experiments. And then we've since taken that out into the field where I've independently in 2023 actually developed a full-scale prototype system. Now, carbonation fits into the construction industry, but where exactly? The construction industry is a $2+ trillion market. Now, geotechnical construction is approximately 250+ billion, and soil stabilization is 7 billion. What we're attacking specifically here is chemical stabilization within that soil stabilization market, all right? And that market is approximately $4 billion. And accelerated carbonation has genuine potential for multiple applications related to chemical soil stabilization, including shallow subgrade stabilization. This is the category in which I'm meeting with someone currently right now and why I'm not with you today. Deep stabilization, all right, which is looking at really deeper foundation systems. And then there's also the rammed earth construction, where you're using locally sourced materials and typically cement or lime to cement walls and other structural elements. I've been in deep conversations with all 3 of these industries and I'm continuing to do so. Building a team and commercially viable product, though, will likely go hand in hand. The technology readiness level is relatively high here at 6 to 7. We've developed prototypes that have been demonstrated in relevant environments and prototypes that have been deployed in operational environments. So this is good. All right. So we feel strong about where we are here. Commercial readiness level, though, is relatively low. We've hypothesized possible needs in the market and beginning to identify specific needs in product placement, as well as potential partners. But it's these partners that are going to help us develop a team. All right. Now, one of the reasons we want to team up with existing companies is that the construction industry is very resource and capital intensive. There's a lot of specialized equipment and machinery that would be expensive to purchase and risky to start out on our own. So creating partnerships makes sense where we can come up with industry specific product definitions and designs. All right. And then ultimately, when we have that team, all right, we'll also be able to go to market with their understanding and utilize their supply chains. And so this is very evident. So in summary, really, NuTerra technology is timely. There are evolving greenhouse gas regulations, reporting requirements, and this has the construction industry scrambling really to figure out how can we reduce our emissions, which they know are by and large attributed to the materials that they rely on. NuTerra has a solution. We're giving them the opportunity to use our technology that can come up with a product that has equivalent performance while also substantially reducing GHG emissions attributed to construction and soil stabilization. What we expect to do here is co-develop industry-specific enablement systems. And that's where I mentioned several different industries within the chemical stabilization category. And by catering to multiple industries, we'll be able to expand where UMaine can license IP and potentially create new IP moving forward. Thank you all for being here tonight, listening to what I have to say. Again, I apologize for not being with you, but if you do have any questions, my email is below. Please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the MIRTA team, and take care.
So that is NuTerra. Like I said, Aaron's out talking to a potential corporate partner, which is great. So that's what we want. So we're happy to give him a pass for not being here tonight for things like that. So going forward, as you can see, it's about a 10-minute interview. We will do about 5 minutes of Q&A. I will pass the mic around for Q&A. Again, this is not a PA system, but we do want the mic out there for Q&A so that the folks who are following online can hear the questions that are being asked. So with that, I'm going to invite Manisha up. And make sure that works. We're good to go. You guys, tell us about Astroneer.
Thank you, Anthony. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. My name is Manisha Chaudhary, and I'm a postdoc here at UMaine, and one of the team members of Astroneer. And in our team, as our project name says, graphene-enabled PFAS water treatment, we have been designing filtration media to remove a wide range of PFAS, which will be effective in the presence of natural organic matter. And our process will not only remove PFAS in the presence of NOM, it will be faster and it's going to last longer compared to the available and existing technologies. Before I begin my talk, I would like to ask you a few questions. How many of you like eating? All of us. Makes sense. And how many of you like cooking? A few less hands now. And who enjoys cleaning once cooking, eating is done? Who likes doing dishes? As expected, no one. That's not our favorite part. That's when they introduced non-stick pans to make our cleaning easier, to make our life a bit easier. So these non-stick pans, they make our life easier. It's easy to clean them, but they come with a hidden cost. Similar to these non-stick pans, other products such as waterproof jacket, waterproof makeup, firefighting foam, they all make our life easier and better, but we have to pay a cost for them in terms of these PFAS contaminants, which are known as forever chemicals. And why do we call them forever chemicals? Because they make our pans non-stick, but they stick with us forever. Okay, fine, we have PFAS, so what? Why they are bad? They are bad, and the study has been, there are so many studies which proved that exposure to these PFAS, they can cause various types of cancers like kidney cancer, cancer related to reproduction system. It can increase cholesterol level, they can cause thyroid disease, and even birth defects in newborn babies. Now I will talk about PFAS is bad, it's around everywhere. I will talk about the scale, how it's affecting our drinking system, drinking water system. And in this slide, as you can see, in public water supplies, more than, in US, we have more than 148 public water supplies. Out of them, only 4% have been tested for PFAS. And out of those 4%, 45% are contaminated with PFAS. In case of private well, even the testing is even worse. Only a handful of them are being tested, and they are not even being regulated. And out of those, the tested ones, 20% are PFAS positive. By now, we all have heard about PFAS contamination in farms in Maine, and 11% of the tested, only 10% tested, 11% of them are PFAS contaminated in Maine. Considering this whole scenario, the urgency of the matter, US EPA decided to regulate our drinking water, and they released National Drinking Water Regulation this year. By that regulation, by 2027, all public water supply, they should monitor 6 PFAS, and by 2029, if any of them are contaminated with PFAS, they should find a treatment solution. So that's where Estranir comes in picture, our team. We have been trying to develop a solution for this problem, and we are developing a filtration media which you pack in a column, and when you pass through a contaminated water or water which can come from river or a groundwater such as a well to produce clean drinking water. And this filtration media is based on graphene. We are using a technology to produce these pellets, and then we are using them to remove PFAS. This slide here shows a comparison between the available current technologies such as activated carbon ion exchange and reverse osmosis membrane, and how our product is better than all these 3 technologies. Activated carbon ion exchange, reverse osmosis membrane, they perform really well for long chain PFAS. Long chain means big molecule PFAS, but activated carbon doesn't work well if the pollutants are small in size, the PFAS, and all of them, they struggle if there is natural organic matter present in water. Now, what is natural organic matter? Natural organic matter, it's a mixture of organic compounds. Let's imagine a river. It has plant leaves, dead animals, and bugs, and algae. All these, they contribute and produce a mixture of organic compounds, which is known as natural organic matter. So our water or bodies, we can't avoid them. They are they're naturally part of them. These technologies, they can't perform well, whereas our graphene can really perform well. Not only it's going to remove PFAS, it's going to provide faster removal, and it's going to provide a long lifespan for your PFAS removal. So we did some preliminary experiments in our lab. If you take some water, it's like ultra purified water. There is nothing just except water. You mix some PFAS into it. And then we used one of the available technology that's granular activated carbon. We filtered that water through that, and it was possible to remove 100% of water. But if we have clean water, we don't need to filter it, right? We are talking about water from nature, water from river, water from a well. What does it have? It has natural organic matter. So in this solution, then we mixed natural organic matter, and then we used the same technology to remove PFAS, and it can only remove 5% of it, because the most of these pores, they get clogged by these natural organic matter. And we interviewed one of the public water supply in Bangor. They don't use any filtration system. They just take the water from flood pond and they just do advanced oxidation process. They don't filter it. They don't remove any PFAS. And here in our technology, when we used that same PFAS natural organic matter contaminated water filtered through that graphene, then we found that it was possible to remove 95% of PFAS. Okay, maybe there is a scope of improvement with 5%, but we still need to develop our technology. We need to develop our prototype to reach that level. Based on, so to understand the market, okay, the issue is there, it's widespread, it's timely. We interviewed more than 45 companies to understand, is our hypothesis true? Is it really the available technologies, they can't perform in the presence of natural matter? And we found that almost every company, they said that when there is natural organic matter, the technology doesn't work well. They need to use an additional treatment system to first remove organic matter, and then they focus on the contaminants. And in addition to these three, our hypothesis points, we also discovered that when they use activated carbon, it can even contribute to arsenic contamination in its initial lifespan. And then we try to find, okay, where our technology can make more impact. Considering the widespread PFAS contamination throughout private well and public water supplies, and based on the current regulations by US EPA and in future by other state regulatory bodies, there is going to be high demand requirement for filtration media for PFAS. And we interviewed several companies, and we found that public water supply can be a space where we can have an impact. That's a market of $53 billion, and 25% is allocated to just filtration technology. What if we target the area where it's producing PFAS itself, the industries? So then we found out that industrial wastewater market is even bigger. It's 300 billion market, and 15% of is allocated to filtration, around 45 billion. Through MIRTA program, we have learned a lot, because I don't know about other people, but I have always been, being a researcher and scientist, I have always been a technology focused lab rat who knows how to do experiments in the lab, but I don't know how to make a product which is commercially viable. So through MIRTA, we have learned to produce these commercially viable product based on the market gap and finding what this market really needs and how can we address those solutions. So initially, our technology readiness level, before MIRTA, we just had an hypothesis. Now we did some preliminary experiments. We had our filtration media, and in commercialization process, as I said, that we were zero there. It was not even possible to put zero, but now we know the market where we need to go. We have a team from different people. We have formed our advisory board members, and we have learned how to how to do interviews, how to form a hypothesis based on each different customer segments of the companies. Before that, I would like to mention not only the sectors I talked about, they are the entry points. There are different customer segments which we would like to focus in future, such as food and beverage industry, bottled water producing companies, and agriculture and aquaculture industries as well. So at this stage, we got funding from MIRTA in 2024, and we are working on our lab experiments, and we are planning to get national call by 2025 and utilize that funding to develop prototype. And we are still in the process of patent filing. By that next 2026, we will decide which path we want to follow, if it's a startup or if it's licensing to a company. And then we will have partnership with industries to run real world pilot scale studies. And by that time, if you want to bring our product in the market, we want to do NSF certification from Europe, and international certification, ISO, FDA, so that these technology can be used for water filtration. By this time, I would like to thank my graphene team here. This project has been supervised by Onur Opul, who's a Libra Associate Professor and Director of PFAS Plus Research Initiative, and he has experience more than 20 years in developing water treatment material. Dr. Sharmila Mukhopadhyay, she has experience more than 30 years with carbon-based materials. And Kenneth, who is a graduate student, has been helping me throughout this process. And Venu is a technical advisor here. So I would like to end our talk by showing you this picture. Each data point here, it's not only saying that it's drinking water above proposed limit PFAS concentration, but it's also a community, a person, and lives. And we believe that it's not only a national crisis, it gives an opportunity to us for innovation, for collaboration, and to bring that change. Thank you for listening to me today.
Great. So happy to take a couple of questions. Again, this isn't for PA, this is for the people on the live stream. So any questions?
Thank you. You might have covered this on your last slide, but you mentioned that 45% of drinking water supplies have contaminate with PFAS. Is there a limit to where that needs to be, where that becomes problematic? I mean, it's one thing to say 45% have, but like, is it
so in
a certain level that it needs to be a problem? Or?
Yeah, they have been it's PFAS is not only one chemical, it's a group of chemicals, more than 10,000. And Maine has been regulating 6 PFAS out of those 10,000. And those 45% I talked about, they either one or more than one crossed the limit of allowed limit based on the state or US EPA regulation. US EPA didn't have any regulation. Before that, they had health advisory concentration, but this year they released not only had health advisory, like regulated concentration. So that's called like minimum concentration level, MCL. So those studies, they've crossed that level.
Other questions?
Now, obviously, this is like way bigger than a Brita filter, but a Brita filter you have to replace like every month, right? How long, like with what you guys are building here, like what's the replacement time? Like, how long would it last before we have to change it?
Our belief is that as we are removing NOM before, so they are not even present. So we believe that it's going to last longer than what Brita filter can last. But we still need to do more studies to come up with exact numbers.
Great. Thank you.
I also would like to thank MIRTA team and my advisory members for helping me through this process.
Thank you, Manisha. Awesome. All right. Excellent job there. I will invite VJ up to tell us about PryGen. Sir.
Thank you.
Show is yours.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm VJ. I am from Team PryGen. I am a doctoral candidate in the Department of Computer Science, and today I'll be talking about what we have been working on in our lab and in the MIRTA program. Okay. I'm going to start with a simple fact that is very relevant to everyone present here. Either you're using an iPhone or you're using an Android phone, and you'd be using one of these 3.8 million iOS apps or 3.3 million Android apps. However, did you know that in iOS, about 67% of the apps incorrectly describe what information is being used by your app? So by discrepancy, I mean that your app is saying that it's not collecting location, but it's actually collecting your location. And this is important because this information could be sold to any of the third parties, which includes insurance companies, which could buy that data and identify you and try to increase your rate. This number is even more staggering for Android, where it's 80%. Do you want to guess if you're using one of those 80% or 60% apps? You'd most likely be correct that you're using one of those apps that incorrectly describe these privacy behaviors of the apps that you're using. And this is an important problem because we can see that these are very big numbers, both in iOS as well as Android, even though Apple likes to advertise that they focus on privacy. Not really. This is an important problem because considering myself as a software developer, if I want to create an app, all the privacy regulations I have to follow, such as Europe's GDPR or California CCPA, if I'm not following that, for each violations, I might be charged heavily. These fines are very hefty, especially for companies or developers at early stage when they're trying to get their app or a company off the ground. Just in 2024 alone, just by GDPR, the fines were about $1 billion. We're just talking about one regulation and 1 year. Think about the impact it can have over multiple years and multiple regulations, because you won't be just launching a company just in Maine or just in the Northeast region, right? It has to be global. Apart from a developer's perspective, thinking from users, it also violates our ability to make accurate decisions. Do we want to use an app that shares our location information, our health information with third parties, right? If the app is inaccurately describing it, we won't be making that decision ourselves. Furthermore, it also is violating our trust. This is not only important for us, but it's also important for developers, especially at the early stage, because to separate themselves from large companies, which have a lot of money, they have big legal teams to ensure their compliance. For a small company, it's important to set them apart. And if they're not able to ensure compliance, they would be fined heavily, which would cost them the company, and they won't be able to build user trust, which could be another factor that separates them from the competition. Now, let's look at why this is a problem and why it happens. So as a developer, usually I'm mainly focused on getting my app out of the market, and usually I won't understand what are the privacy behaviors of my app, especially if I'm using a lot of different software libraries to build this. And because I want to be compliant, I want to create privacy policies, I would use an online generator that answers some questions and create a template privacy policy. Now, this privacy policy would not match what the app actually does. And even if it matches in the first instance, as soon as I push any change to my app, it will become inconsistent, right? The alternative is I can hire a lawyer that creates this privacy policy for me. However, as we all know, or should know, that lawyers are very expensive, right? I know during the MIRTA program, we learned about that lawyers are $50 email persons or people, right? So they can cost a lot. Furthermore, lawyers understand legal stuff. They don't understand source code, right? So if a developer is providing description, it may not be accurate or what the lawyer is asking for. Right. So there's a communication gap between a developer as well as lawyers. Therefore, the privacy policy that is being generated may not be as accurate that they are creating. So this is an important problem. And oftentimes lawyers also do not trust that is the information accurate? So here's where our approach comes in. What we propose is a framework where we take in an app. Consider your favorite ride-sharing app. We take that app. From that app, we extract the source code, specifically looking at individual lines, individual statements that are using information. We then want to annotate that source code with labels that describe what information is being used, how it is used, and why. We'll take this annotated source code from the app and translate that into simple sentences that briefly describe what information is used, how it is used, and why. We call these simple statements as privacy captions. These simple sentences or privacy captions can then be used by developers in their various forms of privacy notices. This could be in privacy policies, a permission rationale, which is usually a pop-up that you see before an app asks for your location or any of the personal information. It could also be used in privacy labels, which are new type of notice format that you see on app stores. This framework would also work for lawyers because they want to ensure that the privacy policy they're creating is accurate. They can get this technical information correct, and they can be certain that whatever privacy policy they create is accurate. So far in the MIRTA progress, what we did, we conducted 27 interviews where we had this idea where we could automatically generate privacy descriptions of source code from app and wanted to understand how feasible it is, how commercially viable it is. In our 27 interviews, we talked to a lot of people. It included executives, founders, technical, non-technical. We talked with lawyers, developers, compliance officers, and many more. In all of these interviews, firstly, we found that early stage startups are not especially focused on generating accurate privacy notices. Also, larger companies already have legal teams, and they would either have internal tooling or they're not really focused on this aspect. However, non-technical founders who do not have much idea on how to write source code or how to create privacy policies would be more interested in this. But more importantly, lawyers who are interested in making more money definitely found this useful and thought they could use this. Before we started, our technology readiness score was 3 and our commercial readiness score was 1. But through 16 weeks of coaching, doing lots of interviews, going back to the whiteboard, we were able to make more progress in our commercializations. We were able to understand what should be our go-to-market strategy, what is the beachhead market, and we also made progress in technology sector because we're engineers and we love this. So talking about the market, the main market that you want to address is the law firms, right? Based on our research, we found that there are about 2 million global law firms. And of those 2 million law firms globally, there are about 980,000 in US and Europe, which is where main privacy regulations are enforced, such as CCPA and GDPR. Of these 980,000, about 190,000 firms specialize or work in privacy law. These firms are mainly working with companies to create privacy policies. Based on an estimate of how much we would charge them, about $250 approximately, because we'll be saving them at least 10% of their time, we come up with a market of $54 million. And this is the serviceable, obtainable market. For app publishers, which is a second possible market, there are about 800,000 of them, right? And these includes not just individual developers, but small companies that have an app as their main product. Of this, there are 81,000 in both US and Europe. And of these, about 11,000 publishers work in creating finance apps, education apps, health, or other sensitive categories. These categories are heavily enforced by privacy regulations, so they would be more interested in using our services. Through our research, we found that the best approach for commercialization for our product would be a subscription-based model because we want to get those revenues every month. In terms of a company or a approach, we could either license this software as a lab with consultancy, or we could have our own company that makes this app and provide commercialization. For our timeline, as of 2024 fall, We have completed our approach, and we are currently working on testing and training our approach with developers and understanding what are the changes that we need to make. In summer of 2025, we plan on applying to the NSF I-Corps program so that we can conduct more interviews with lawyers and other markets. Apart from that, we want to also do more development because we like sitting in dark rooms and working on code. I want to talk about our team. It's led by Dr. Sapida Ganawati. She's an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science. She has close to a decade years of experience in privacy research. We also have Sarah Hagigi. She's a doctoral student in our lab, and she's a sales lead. She has a lot of experience doing survey research, so she has helped us a lot with that. Wilder Baldwin is a master's student and a upcoming researcher in AI. And Dylan Ballmer is a software engineer. He has a lot of experience with startups in Maine, so he's been helping us with that. Lastly, me, apart from being a pretty face, I also developed all of the technology and working on that. I would especially like to thank our advisors and mentors, Justin, who's here. Hopefully Kendra and Jeff are also watching online. They helped us a lot, help understand what should be the market, where should we shift. And last but not the least, we definitely want to thank the MIRTA team who helped us a lot throughout the coaching process, the boot camp, and through all the interview process. Thank you.
Very good. Questions? Again, not a PA mic, so speak loudly. Any questions for VJ? All right, someone's gonna have a question. No? All right. Well, thank you, sir. Good job.
Thank you.
Really should have preloaded some of those, I guess. All right. And last but not least, I'm going to invite Zane up here to tell us about Reform Composites. Nope, that's not what I want. There we go. There you go. Sir.
Already, yeah. Good night, everybody. Oh, not yet. Good evening, everybody. Getting ahead of myself. I'm Zane Justin. I'm a research engineer at the Advanced Structures and Composites Center right across the street. And tonight I'll be representing Reform Composites Engineering. And our mission at Reform is to reach new markets with lightweight, anti-corrosive, and infinitely shapeable parts through the continuous production of long fiber thermoplastic composites. So that's a mouthful. Let's unpack it. In the next 30 seconds, I'm going to turn all of you into composites experts. Congratulations. You don't need a master's degree. You've got this. So we're going to focus on a particular subset of composites called fiber reinforced polymers, or FRPs. So in general, composites have two parts. In our case, we have a fiber reinforcement. So you can think about glass fibers, carbon fibers, basalt fibers, even natural fibers. You also have a polymer resin. So that can be something we call a thermoset or a thermoplastic, and I'll get into the difference there in just a minute. So you take those two and you combine them, and voila, you have a FRP. So what are the benefits of this technology? Why do we care? Well, FRPs are lightweight. You get to choose these very lightweight fibers. They're very strong. They're corrosion resistant. They're not like metals. They don't rust. They have customizable properties. Because you get to choose both parts, you get to tailor this final material, this final composite to your application. They're long-lived because they don't corrode. And all of this means it's cost-effective. You get to build your composite to your particular solution. You get to drive that cost down. And it's scalable. So there's many composite manufacturing techniques on the market, and they help to raise this technology up to industry levels. So you can think about automobile parts, right? That wouldn't be possible if it wasn't scalable to the industrial level. So all of these technologies are benefits that we get from what we call thermosets. Thermosets cure, think about like a two-part epoxy, right? Once that's cured, it doesn't change. But if we use a thermoplastic resin, we get some added benefits. Thermoplastics can be reshaped with heat. They can be warmed up and reshaped. And because of that, you've improved your recyclability at the end of its life. You can now take this part and actually turn it into something new. So some markets that we see FRPs in, you have things like sporting goods, so a hockey stick. You have things like industry and infrastructure, so rebar, and power generation, so wind turbines. Wind turbine blades are composite parts. So unfortunately, thermoplastics are not a silver bullet. There is a catch-22 here, and that's that thermoplastic polymers are highly viscous and they struggle to saturate the fiber reinforcement. What does that mean? If you think of like trying to run water through your hair, right? That wets out very easily. We call it wetting out. In contrast, thermoplastics are very viscous. It's more like Play-Doh. Trying to wash your hair with Play-Doh probably wouldn't go pretty well. So the consequence of that is we have limited part cross sections and thicknesses. What that means is that the parts we make are pretty limited in size. Generally, a lot of these manufacturing processes are batch oriented, means you make a quantity, right? You make a batch of cookies, you make a batch of composite parts, and that's expensive. And you have limited material selection. A lot of these technologies really shoehorn you into choosing some particular materials. And because of that, you lose out on a lot of these properties that we like. The customizable aspect, the cost effectivity, and the scalability. All of that means that thermoplastic composites sort of lose out, and it costs a lot on the manufacturer side. And this is where we are proposing Reform Composites solution. So across the street at the ASCC, we have developed what we're calling the continuous forming machine, which combines the efficient continuous production of a method known as pultrusion with the precision shaping capabilities of what's called thermoforming. What that means is we can take these thermoplastic composites and continuously shape them and form them to a final part. We accomplish this because we use pre-saturated composite tapes as our feedstock. So we can take that feedstock, we heat it up to a processing temperature, we apply forming pressure, and then we cool the finished shape down, and you have your composite part. The pultrusion process, the pultrusion aspect of this is very efficient because it's continuous. If you imagine almost pulling this material through the process continuously, that's essentially how pultrusion works. So you get some nice benefits. Let's talk about that, what the impact is. So the CFM enables continuous production of those thermoplastic composites without those restrictions on size, without restrictions on materials, without environmental hazards that are unfortunately prevalent in a lot of other technologies, and all of this at commercially viable speeds. And what that means, the punchline, is that CFM is a new thermoplastic manufacturing method, maintaining all of those lovely benefits of thermoplastic FRPs. So we get all of these attributes that we liked before without any drawbacks. So what can we make? Down here, we have some examples of profiles. We can make prismatic shapes, such as rods and plates. We can make shapes that have deformations down the length, such as if you imagine rebar, that's got those what are called lugs on it. We can make structural profiles such as I-beams, angles, and channels, which are really useful for construction applications. We can make hollow profiles such as box tubes, pipes, and conduit. We can make shapes for civil works such as sheet piling, which can interlock with one another. And finally, this bottom one we're pretty excited about. We're calling advanced curve geometries, where we can make these parts that have continuous curvatures in multiple directions, which is really interesting for several applications. So our accomplishments under MIRTA, I'm going to break it down into 3 separate categories. The first is our market understanding, and we now see that there are basically 3 beachhead markets. The first is users of metal components in construction and infrastructure. And I'd like to highlight this is active work in progress. We do have companies who are interested in working with us that we are actually pursuing some work with. We have companies performing R&D manufacturing. So the Advanced Structures and Composite Center itself is an example of a entity such as that. And composite part manufacturers. So people who are making these composite end-use parts, your hockey sticks, your rebar, and what have you. Next, we have our commercial readiness level, or CRL. At this point, after MIRTA, we have a better understanding of our current commercial readiness and what our path forward looks like. We're also more aware of advantages of sort of the machine sale business model and the composite sale business model. And what that means is, are we going to be selling the actual machine to someone so they can make their own materials, or are we selling the part itself and doing that production on our own? And then we have the technology readiness levels, or TRL. At this point, post-MIRTA, we have a much more accurate model of our minimum viable product for that machine sales. So we know what customers are looking for in that piece of capital equipment. And we also have a better idea of the MVP for composite sales. So what are they looking for in attributes of the actual part itself? And down here, the spiderweb diagram just showing all of those, going from a TRL of 3 to a TRL of 4, pre and post-MIRTA, and a CRL of 1 to 3 pre and post MIRTA. So what markets are interested in this? Our total addressable market, or TAM, we, for this, limited to the global composites market. So things that we could directly break into and replace components with. And that's about $92 billion. Our serviceable addressable market, we further limited down to the US composites market. So people we can get parts and machines to very quickly. And that's about $22 billion. And our serviceable obtainable market, or SOM, comes back to those three beachhead markets. Again, drawing a lot of attention to this construction and infrastructure line, because that's actual active work with potential customers. And that's about $371 million. I'd like to highlight that we believe that this could be higher as we break into markets that are currently dominated by other materials, by metals and other things that we could replace with this technology. And a lot of this was substantiated with our interviews. I think we conducted somewhere around 50 interviews at a variety of conferences, and our major value propositions were well validated by those interviews. So what's the path forward look like for us? In terms of the technology, we have proven out the initial functionality, and we have intellectual property for that. We've proven out what we're calling rotary forming, which is able to add those continuous shapes onto the outside of a part, such as for rebar. We've proven out profile roll forming, which is a very cost-effective way to take a part of one shape and turn it into something else. And that's really cool because it allows people to very quickly iterate on these manufacturing processes. And most recently, we've proven that we can do what we're calling tape winding, where we continuously wrap in a helix more material around the outside of a part. Very good for applications with hollow profiles, such as pipes, or in this case, this image is of, once again, rebar. In the future, we're looking at new profiles, such as hollow profiles, larger profiles, I mentioned sheet piling, things like that. New parts, such as hockey sticks. Actually, I think we're hoping to make hockey sticks for the UMaine hockey team at some point, which would be really neat. And then increased capacities. So really pushing the industrial scale of this. Can we make parts that are competitive in terms of size? And then on the business side, we have completed UMaine's I-Core and now completing UMaine's MIRTA program. We have formed an LLC, which is exciting. And currently we are exploring MTI funding as well as contract R&D for those beachhead customers. That goes back to those construction and infrastructure clients. In the future, we'll be looking at SBIR and STTR funding, as well as getting an incubation space, looking at possibly doing our initial machine sales, so selling that capital equipment and doing low volume part production. And then even farther out, obtaining our own, manufacturing our own dedicated machine for development, increasing our volume of production, growing our staff and facilities, and continuing research and development with the ASCC. Our team, all 5 of us are here tonight. We are all engineers at the Advanced Structures Composite Center. Cody Shelter is our team lead. He has a background in program development, program management, and has actually been the sort of shepherd of this technology up to this point. Sam Heathcote has a lot of experience in additional program management, project management, and managing operations. And then the 3 of us all bring different flavors of technical specialities to the team, such as mechanical design, process design, and systems design. And with that, I'd like to thank you for listening. I encourage you to visit us at our website, reformcomposites.com. Thank you for listening. I'd really like to thank everyone who's helped us with this. So our advisory board, the MIRTA team, and the many, many people who've contributed to this technology over the year. I'd encourage you to check out the poster in our area. It's got a lot of names on it. And thank you.
Questions for the CFM team? Wow, these guys are just nailing it. No one's got any questions. All right. Oh, we have a question.
And you need the other team to help you.
Yeah, I think that's where the other team would probably come in for us. But yes, life cycle analysis is something we're interested in, and further investigation. A lot of R&D is needed for that.
You're good.
So there is PFAS or there isn't PFAS in your material?
I'm not certain that I'm qualified to say.
Okay.
Other questions? All righty. Thank you, Zane. All righty. So I'm going to put this down. That one. I'm going to jump back here. I'm just going to open that slide up. Cool. All right. So, you got to see pretty much the broad scope of what we talked about. You got teams that are probably going to get back in the lab, continue developing what they're working on, find that product market fit, and then perhaps come back through this whole process again and continue through it, to the other end of the spectrum where we've got a team that is actively spinning out from the university, starting an LLC, and commercializing their technology. If you liked what you saw this evening, there's a bunch of stuff that might be of interest to you. One is we have an iCore cohort. So this is free of this program. So doing those 12 interviews, getting that initial understanding of how to do customer discovery. We're starting that program in January. Applications are open. If you simply Google UMaine iCore, you will get right to our site. You'll see the application link right there. You can apply. I encourage you to apply. It's very quick. It's about a month. And I think you'll learn a lot. We will be starting our next iCore cohort soon. I think we're trying to, I'm sorry, not iCore, MIRTA. I think we're trying to figure out when the best timing is. Ending this program in November has been a bit of a challenge. So I think we're going to adjust the calendar a little bit to make it a little bit more friendly, both for the teams who are going through the program and the staff who's trying to run this. We have another accelerator program. If you're specifically in the forestry bioproduct space, we are going to be standing up an accelerator in 2025 that looks sort of similar like this. So stay tuned for that. We have partnerships. So if you haven't heard the news, we are part of now the newly formed New England iCore Hub that the NSF has kind of changed their model. So if the timing of getting into some of these programs doesn't work here on the University of Maine, we have now 6 or 8 other universities we can partner with. If you've got a if you've got a really big opportunity and need to get into a program, we can get you there. So that's sort of what's coming up. I do encourage you to talk with our teams tonight. They are looking for partnerships, looking for customers, looking for guidance. If you've heard something that really interests you, looking for help, you want to go work in a lab. If you're a student here and you're looking for a lab to get to work in, I'm sure all of these teams are interested in another set of hands to help them out. With that, I would like to thank everyone for coming this evening. Again, thanking all of our instructors, all of our advisors, all of our partners, including MTI, that have helped us put on this program. Grab some food, have a drink, hang out with us for a little bit more this evening. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you so much.